Please join me in welcoming the Chairman of the Postal Regulatory Commission, the Honorable Ruth Goldway.
Well, thank you all very much. What's wrong?
She's unaware. If a phone goes off, we told everybody cut their cell phone. If it goes off, they owe us $10 to go to SPAC.
Oh.
So, and they're instructed to point them out.
I see. Okay. Those of you who pointed out, you have to give to that 50-50 fund right away. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for the warm welcome that you gave me when I came in earlier this afternoon. I feel like I'm surrounded by old friends, and in these days when our commission is working overtime on some really important, complicated issues, and we're all feeling a little strapped, it's really helpful to have a pat on the back and some encouragement and kind words coming from all of you. So I very much appreciate it. I hope my talk today will be helpful to you all as you move forward this week with your plans to do some lobbying and coordination among all of your groups to help the Postal Service. I want to thank Lou Atkins with his, even though his voice is weak, he managed to give me a wonderful introduction, and Ben Clapp and James Kalaki and Brian Wagner and Ted Keatings. I think the team here is terrific, and I really appreciate being invited. Bruce Moyers is somebody I work with often here in Washington. We're old friends, and you're lucky to have him as somebody who represents you here in Washington. We also have some friends. I got a particularly warm welcome from the team who spoke at the South Dakota hearings. Our experience in Rapid City was just wonderful. I have that picture of me in front of Mount Rushmore at my home. I think it was a really inspirational visit. And we enjoyed meeting the representatives from your organization in Buffalo and in Memphis, Tennessee as well. And Mr. Raposo is here from the NAPIS organization, and I spoke with him last week. I hope he won't be bored with what I say this time, because it's not much different. The story is this simple. Over the last 4 years since the Postal Service since the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, the PAE, was enacted, the Postal Service has lost $20 billion. Over those same 4 years, the Postal Service has put $21 billion into the Healthcare Retiree Benefit Fund to pay for future retirees' health benefits. It's a fairly straightforward calculation. If it hadn't been for overly ambitious requirement to pay into that fund without any flexibility or recognition of the changes that might be needed in a recession, or that might be needed as a result of the reduction in employees, or the relative way in which other companies finance their healthcare benefit package over an amortized period of 30 years, the Postal Service has had to take every bit of its discretionary money and put it into the Healthcare Retiree Benefit Fund. So there isn't money to paint post offices, there isn't money to replace the 20-year-old vehicles that are on the streets, and every effort is being made, every creative effort in the Postal Service is being made to cut costs, and they really don't have the time or the resources needed to plan for the future of the Postal Service in a positive way, the way you and I would like them to. It's very frustrating. But it is pretty simple. And I think it's a message that you're here in Washington to explain to people who are interested, and I hope you will do it. Certainly, those people among you who represent rural areas, I think provide a particularly strong opportunity to make your case to the people who need to hear it most about why it's important to maintain a financially viable postal service. We have this wonderful institution in America. It's an institution that is low-tech, but high-touch. There's somebody who goes to a residence or a home 6 days a week, representing the federal government in the most positive light imaginable. It's no accident that the Postal Service has such a high reputation and rating when asked about the relative ratings of government agencies. We do a good, simple, honest job with hardworking people who care about their communities and are there often to do heroic acts if necessary. So the thought that we would want to dismantle that network at a time when a lot of people in the country are in trouble, when many people don't have access to the internet, when we see time and time again the limits of technology, it's a good idea to have this basic system still up and running in America. And what we have to do is figure out a way to support it, because it may not be possible in the future for the mail volumes that we've had in the past to carry the entire weight of the system. We may have to find new products and new ranges of services that we can generate some income from that will keep the Postal Service alive and viable and useful for everybody in the future. And that's what I try to do in my job. It's not easy because most of the job of a regulator is very dull and ministerial. We have hundreds of cases in front of us over the course of a year or two, which are really a question of reading the contracts that the Postal Service has entered into these days, international contracts more than others, or some with priority mail users and package users, to make sure that the terms are fair, that the Postal Service isn't giving away the store, that the rates do cover their costs, and that these are done in a way that meet the government standards for transparency and accountability. That takes a lot of time and it's pretty tedious, but it is the bulk of what we do. And then we do some other things which also take a lot of work and analysis and don't seem that glamorous. The first is the annual report that we do, that we prepare for Congress, reporting on our own activities to let the Congress know what the role of the regulator is and how we function in the context of the Postal Service. That's required by the law. The second is to provide an annual compliance determination. Each year, 90 days after the Postal Service has completed its fiscal year, it submits a report to us evaluating all of its activities, showing us what the costs were and the rates were to make sure that the rates cover costs and that all of the requirements of the PAEA are met. We have to review that document to make sure, in fact, the Postal Service did meet the requirements of the law in 2010. In this case, it's a retroactive evaluation of the Postal Service. And then we have to make a careful report that goes to Congress and the Postal Service highlighting where things are moving forward and where they're not. And all of you know that it isn't always easy to get information out of the Postal Service. And I think it's getting a little easier. We've had better luck year after year, and Pat Donahoe promises to be more cooperative, and I'm looking forward to that. But there's an awful lot of effort that goes into, well, you've given us this number, but what about that number? What about this issue? And analyze that. So there are a lot of time that's spent in the back and forth of information to get the record right so we can make decisions. And that's kind of tedious. So it's really fun for me to be able to come out to meet with the real people who are there doing the real jobs of the Postal Service and to see you all. And it was especially helpful to all of us to do the field hearings that we did last year, to hear from citizens. It really opened our eyes to the importance of the Postal Service and the emotional hold that it has on America. The annual compliance determination will be out on March 30th, and our staff is working hard, going through all the numbers, making the analysis, seeing if the discounts that the Postal Service gives to mailers are equal to or less than the money that the Postal Service would save if it had to do it itself. And if they're giving away more than what they would save if they did it themselves, then that's against the law, and we have to highlight that or figure out how it's justified in the scheme of the complicated rates and products that the Postal Service provides. We have to look at the service standards that the Postal Service has promised to implement as the result of the PAEA. And many of you know the frustrations that the mailing community is having with the implementation of the Intelligent Mail Barcode. Well, the Postal Regulatory Commission is having a lot of frustration as well, because that was the system that we were counting on to help us measure the delivery standards for commercial mail and for standard mail, because we have the EXFC for first class, single piece. And the implementation of that process is going much more slowly. The law had said they were supposed to have an external measurement system in place 1 year after the law was passed. This is 4.5 years, and we still don't have something. We're working with them because the mailing community and the Postal Service said it was going to be less expensive and more efficient to do it this way. We have yet to see the proof in the pudding. Those of you who work in operations and can share information about the IMB, I'd appreciate hearing about it. It's something that we're going to continue to work on with the Postal Service. We meet with them monthly to hear about their success or the changes that they're making in their IMB plan. So if you have information, by all means, share it with us on that issue. The other big issue that's taking a lot of our time that I'm sure you're aware of is what we went to the field to talk to you about, the request by the Postal Service to reduce its delivery from 6 to 5 days and eliminate Saturday delivery. And they've made this proposal to us, and our staff has been trying very hard to make a very thorough and objective analysis of all the numbers and the impact on service. The tradition of the Postal Regulatory Commission is to work really hard to find consensus on the reports that we issue. And as you can imagine, it's not as easy to find consensus on this issue as it might be on others. So we're really trying to focus on those aspects that we can agree upon that will be the crux of the information that the Congress and the Postal Service need to make a final decision. And I hope you will find them useful too, to use in a way that helps you to explain to the legislature what the impact of 6 to 5 day delivery will be. My own particular view has been recently to try and describe it as the Postal Service was selling you a 16-ounce glass of Coca-Cola, and next week it wants to sell you a 10-ounce glass of Coca-Cola for the same price. So what does that mean in terms of what's acceptable to the community and what's acceptable under the law? Another big issue is those people in rural communities are going to maybe get an 8-ounce cup of Coca-Cola for their 44 cents because they're going to get less service. And maybe some people who are commercial mailers will get a 12-ounce cup of Coca-Cola because they're going to get Saturday delivery, Saturday processing. And yet we have over us this cloud of the financial problems of the Postal Service and how desperately it needs to find significant revenue, and the inevitability that mail as we know it is going to change, and there are declining volumes in mail. So what is the responsible thing to do with that scenario? And the commissioners have been discussing that and thrashing it out, and I hope that when we finally get our opinion out to you, that you will find it useful and helpful. It's been a difficult process, and I appreciate your friendship and support and hope it'll be there afterwards as well so we can work on other issues. Because really what we need to get the Postal Service to focus on is the future and what things it can do in the future to be vibrant and relevant. And certainly the law allows them to make partnerships with other federal agencies. It's not easy to do. The other federal agencies want to protect their turf. It's not clear where the Postal Service gains revenue or just accepts additional costs to do it, but there have got to be things that can be done. I'm sure that there are many areas, especially now that a lot of Social Security checks are going to go into cards and people are going to have to come someplace secure and safe to charge up their cards. Other people will need identifications. My favorite is that the Park Service sells these $10 golden passes. So if you're an old person, you can, like me, you can buy one of these and then it's free to get into any national park in the country. But you usually only buy them at the national park you go to. Well, why not have them around at all post offices all around the country? And people can buy them. The Postal Service will get a little bit of the money. More money will go into the National Park Service because more people will buy these cards. Those kind of simple little ideas are things that could make some difference and begin to reposition the Postal Service. I also think the Postal Service has to figure out how to embrace digital communications and integrate them into the systems we have in terms of the mail that's provided, hybrid mail, or providing some sort of digital mail directly. Certainly in empowering its frontline employees who face the public to have some sort of BlackBerry or various device that allows them to communicate with the public and with the operations immediately. So if there's a question, it can be answered. If there's a service that it can be provided on the spot with a little handheld device that gets you the information and the process completed immediately. I was an advocate for, and still am an advocate for transforming the vehicle fleet in the Postal Service. It's now a fleet that's on average 20 to 25 years old. It gets about 6 to 8 miles to the gallon. And it could easily be transformed into a fleet of electric battery vehicles. Electric batteries are actually ideally suited for the stop and start kind of route that most of the Postal Service fleet is involved in. And we could save the Postal Service a lot of money on fuel costs, and you know fuel is going up, and we could present the Postal Service as part of a forward-thinking, innovative network of communications around the country. And we'd help the environment as well. I mean, you'd win all around. The problem is you need capital to buy these new machines, these new automobiles, and the Postal Service doesn't have the capital. It has so little that it can't even enter into some of the experimental opportunities that are available because it doesn't want to waste any resources on studies and those kinds of efforts. Now, they're doing some, and I think the Postal Service is taking a look at its facilities to try and do some energy conservation, but there's lots more to be done. My chief counsel had an opinion piece in the New York Times a month or two ago suggesting that the Postal Service take that vehicle fleet, put sensors on it, and use it as a two-way communications tool for other government agencies or for business who want to know what's going on. There's no other system in America that goes to so many places so often and on a regular route. It's not random. It's you know every day you're going to be there at just about that time. You can really make important comparisons that are worthwhile for any studies. Now, I'm happy to say, last year when that was presented, the CFO dismissed that idea, but just this week we heard that the Postmaster General is embracing it. So that's one new idea, chalk it up, that we're working on with him. And I'm sure there are many more, lots more in this room. And I know it's tough for you because you're facing March 25th. And that's probably not the end, given what the Postmaster General says about the cuts that he's looking to make over the next couple of years. He feels he's got to cut the workforce in order to match it with volume. But if you don't take some time as well to think positively, and the PMG isn't taking time to think positively, we're not going to solve this problem, and we'll just be going down, 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 down. So I urge you all to take a little time to come up with your own creative ideas and push them forward and see if you can get the Postal Service to adopt them. I got in a little trouble last summer. I gave a talk, and the night before, it was an international talk, so you feel a little more relaxed all the time. But it was an international talk, and the regulator from Finland, the postal operator from Finland got up and complained about the regulator. Wouldn't let them raise rates, it made them do this, do that, whatever. But it was a funny talk. So I got up the next day, and I was the regulator, so I could complain about the operator. And what I said was, sometimes I think of the Postal Service as a teenager, and I'm the parent, and I have to tell them what's good for them. They don't always know what's good for them. They think they do because they're big and strong and can, bully their way to an awful lot of decisions that are made. But the parent, or in this case the regulator, can see things a little differently and can advise them about what might be better for them to do. And they were not happy with that metaphor. Especially the men, I realized afterwards. This is a woman's sort of thing, it's a family way to describe the situation. And they didn't want to be thought of as children with a mother, that really offended them. But the notion that the Postal Service is strong, it's competent, they do a remarkable job. It's 40% of the world's mail delivered at the cheapest rate with the most honest workforce. It's just terrific. And by the way, they responded to the recession in a way that was more effective and more efficient than almost any other private sector company. If it hadn't been for that retiree health care benefit, the Postal Service would have more than broken even and wouldn't have had to borrow any money over the last 4 years. So they're great guys. But sometimes they need a little advice. And sometimes they're a little full of themselves. So I think it's good to have a regulator. And it's good to have organizations like yours to help them step back and think about what they ought to do better. And that's what I really hope my job is. It's not just to say yes or no on particular items here or there, to punish them if they've done something and they need to report on something, or to give the green light for a new product. It's to really conceive of the betterment of the whole organization and the hundreds of thousands of people who are in it and the hundreds of millions who are impacted by it. And that's what I try and do, and I couldn't do it without the information I get from you guys and the support that I get. So I want to thank you all for patting me on the back this afternoon when I came in, and for whatever efforts you can make to have new ideas and to participate in the functions and operations of the Postal Regulatory Commission. Thank you very much.
Let's have another round of applause for the chairman of the Postal Regulatory Commission, Ruth Goldway.